So the things that we're going to talk about today are going over some resources that we want to make sure everyone knows about, whether you're already in an affiliate group or not. And then we are going to talk a little bit about some of the other groups that are working on a constitutional amendment and what the differences are and who and why we're working with and why. And then we are going to try and split up by geography, by state, or some other combo, depending on kind of who's here and what you need. Like, I know the Charlotte folks already huddled yourselves and made a date for a meeting to set up a group, which is awesome. So we'll just sort of see who's here and what you need in that regard. Is there anything I'm missing? And we do have a bunch of materials that we don't want to take back with us, so we will sell them at, what is it, buyer sale prices?
Buyer sale prices. Everything must go.
Yeah. So, and David and I have to kind of rush to the airport right as soon as we're done. So swarm us, and we will do that. So a few things that I wanted to make sure that folks know about is there's a lot of info on the website, and that is a good thing, partly because, you know, there's a number of organizations who have been working on this issue since before Citizens United had formed Move to Amend. So we had a lot of stuff already, and we've developed a lot of stuff, but there's a lot, so it can be kind of overwhelming and be like, where is that? So one thing I want to make sure everyone knows about and remembers to use is there is a search bar on the top right of the website, and people tell me all the time that they forget about it. And like, if you want the timeline, for example, or pretty much anything, you could just type in. It might take a moment to kind of get exactly what it's called, but we try to actually do that in such a way so that there's a couple of different things that you might imagine that you would put in to find it, and that you will find it. So do use that if you're lost. But if you're wanting to start a Move to Amend affiliate group, there's a whole section in the toolkit on starting a group. So this URL here will directly take you to it, movetoamend.org/start-group. Then once you're, and that's kind of assuming that you're not going to just like apply for affiliate status right away, but you're going to have a meeting and kind of bring a group together, and then you're going to apply to be an affiliate. So there's a page there that's all about what it means to be an affiliate, what your responsibilities are, what the resources are that we offer to affiliates, and the application is there as well. And then this page will take you directly to the toolkit. These things are in the toolkit, but there's a whole toolkit on all kinds of organizing materials. And it's also available from the front page of the site. There's a little red toolbox icon, and you click on that. You can also find it from the main menu or go directly to it. And when you get to this toolkit, it starts off with an article about movement building, and then kind of on the right-hand side is sort of the table of contents, and it's set up in two ways. So first, there's kind of like the path that you might go through if you were going to get started. So there's the stuff about starting a group and then choosing an action, and the actions kind of begin with outreach to kind of recruit people, and then move into stuff like doing a community resolution through your city council or ballot initiative, or some of the bigger things that you could do. So that's kind of one way to use the toolkit. But, excuse me, there's also kind of right underneath that is the tagging system. So every single article or thing in the toolkit is set up to be tagged to a particular area or more. So if you're looking for a skit that you want to do some street theater, there's a section called skits and plays, and instructions on how to make a corporate person costume and stuff like that. If you're looking for resources on having a good meeting, there's a whole section on group process, and some of the stuff that we did yesterday is in there, but there's also a lot more stuff. So no matter what you're doing, it'd be good to look in there. So if you're doing a public event, look at the public education part, and you'll find resources. There's stuff on media, pretty much anything that you might need. And as new affiliates, or as affiliates develop new materials, we put them in there as well. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can borrow from each other. So when you do create things, make sure we know about them so that we can put them in there. And there's a bunch of stuff from the Salt Lake group that I talked about yesterday that's kind of an exemplar affiliate that's doing really well, and a lot of their materials are in there. So, and at any point, stop me if you have questions. I'm just going to keep going. Tell me if I'm going too fast, etc. We do a webinar once a month. The last couple of months we haven't, we've skipped it, but on the first Tuesday of every month we have a webinar training that is normally on the topic of some kind of community organizing, skills building, or maybe particular campaign that we're doing. And the archives are all available through this page as well. So if you have things that you need help with, we'd be happy to offer a webinar training, either from one of our leadership team members to lead it, or sometimes we recruit guests who are experts in some area to ask them to lead a training with us. And that, for folks who don't know, that's a video, it's a live video training that you listen to through either your phone or the computer, and you watch on your computer. And there's like a PowerPoint presentation that goes with it. And all of the recordings are available. If you go to this page, movetoamend.org/actions, you can kind of see what our action campaigns are. And I'm going to I'll show you what those are currently at the moment. So, this is a long-term effort, right? We've talked about that. So along the way, we can't just be like, we're going to do this amendment, and along the way, we just kind of don't have any goals or benchmarks, and we're just going to keep on plugging away for 10 years, right? You will all probably dissipate away if that were what we were to try, and not to mention, everybody else as well who's not even
including me.
Put a whole weekend in, right? So we have to have some things to build towards, right? Yeah, go ahead.
So what is your deadline? We are going to have this amendment in 2 years?
No, we're not thinking of it like that. It's more like these are the things that we would need to have in place in order to get there, and we will go as fast as we can, but we're not putting a schedule on it. We definitely know that it won't be this Congress or next Congress probably, and we might not even be able to go through Congress. Our whole thing is that we've said we will give Congress a chance at it, and that's why our amendment is introduced in Congress. But if they fail to act, we definitely have to be ready for Plan B, which would be a convention and going around them. But we don't need to make that decision yet, because we're not at the point where that Y has hit yet, right? So, and then the other thing is that, I think a lot of us on the national leadership team, it's safe to say, we don't have a lot of confidence in the Congress route. But that is what people expect in terms of how an amendment gets passed. So we need to, it's like how you don't go to direct action, civil disobedience as your first tactic, right? You have to escalate up to that point so that when you're doing it, the general public is sympathetic with you and says, oh yeah, they've tried everything, so now it's totally reasonable that they're locking down of this building. They tried the lawsuits, they tried the petitioning to the government, blah, 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 and now they're going to up the ante because that isn't working. And so we have to take people down that path and show. And I don't think that that'll be too hard, because I think most people believe our system is totally corrupt, but a convention is kind of, daunting to imagine, because it's never been done. Except for the one time where there was a coup in this country when they passed the Constitution. So not such a great history with conventions.
So Caleb, before you go on, you said two very important things I want to make sure that folks understand. One is this notion of escalating up and what that means and what it looks like and where it comes from, because that's part of the national leadership team's theory of social change, like our study of successful movements, not just like what people like or our vision statements, but concretely how things have actually worked, from the abolitionists to the women's suffrage movement to the trade union movement to the civil rights movement. And bluntly, we have to stop there, because whether it's what passes for an environmental movement today, what passes for most of the other movements, have actually forgotten the fact that you have to organize people for power and take them through some steps. So I want to stop for a moment and make sure if there's any questions about that, if people are down with us, if you don't understand it.
Well, because that's going to be the basic question when I go to talk about this. They will say, what is the benchmark or the red line you know, the red line that Obama said about Syria, so what is the red line about here? When is the time?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Could you ask it in a different way?
Yes.
Well, if somebody understands it, you could try
Somebody
answering
can-
it.
Well, here we go, from yesterday, your question about, remember we had the skit about the committee meeting and what went wrong, and then one of the big questions that George said was, who's going to do what by when? I think it's sort of along that line of, is it better for us to have a goal to say, we would like to have this amendment passed by blah, or we're going to have this amendment passed by blah?
Okay, so here, we'll go into this more deeper. So the backstory is that yes, our amendment is introduced in Congress, but you may notice that it doesn't really have very many co-sponsors, for example. We were very ambivalent about having the amendment even introduced this year. We didn't necessarily want to do that because we did not want everyone to think, okay, this campaign has turned into a lobbying Congress strategy. Because remember, Move to Amend is about building a movement. We don't think that this is going to be possible unless we build a movement. And as we talked about yesterday, and our colleagues from other organizations shared with us, you know, in their critiques, and we would agree with them, you know, with like, we're not quite even a movement yet, right? Let alone a big enough movement to actually win this constitutional amendment and whole question of constitutional renewal. So, if we all just turn into lobbying our Congress members
Or state legislators.
We will, you know, be jumping over all the community organizing that still needs to happen to build this movement. So that's why we were ambivalent, because we realize that it sort of gives a impression by having the amendment in Congress that, like, let's go support it, right? But that is not actually what we are working on. So we're still doing, so when I go through our action campaigns, you'll see that they're all about local organizing, capacity building, because that's, you know, really important as well. We need to be able to get to the point where whether we're talking about Congress doing it or a convention, there's still going to be elected officials that are we're going to need to have with us, right? Because a convention means the state legislators have to be the ones to call this convention and then send delegates. So we need to make sure that our people or our champions are there, and probably what it means is some of us need to actually be there in the room making these decisions. And so we need to have the capacity to win these elections and to make this a litmus test issue to say, you know, do you support this amendment? If you don't, we will be able to see to it that you are not elected. And so, you know, that's how this works, right? So I would say we're not there yet. So that's why
the
we talk about
benchmarks,
the way
you just
it's
named the benchmarks.
Right, so a lot of those things
So you don't
are
have a
benchmarks.
fixed date in, you know, that's this your date, but the indicators are X number of states who have directed their elected representatives to support the amendment. That's a benchmark. Enough political education among the base or among people to be able to hold an elected official accountable. Those kind of benchmarks are part of the action. So those do exist, and those exist now. And that's what we use to measure progress, not a date.
Right. And we are in the process of kind of writing this all up, but we've also been hesitant to do that because we want to also be able to be nimble, because we also recognize that we are in a time of a lot of falling apart of the current system, right? And so there's a potential for things to move faster than they might otherwise, and we don't want to get
That's
ourselves...
especially the case in this state.
Yes, well, you know, and Michigan and Texas, there are a lot of states, right? Where Wisconsin, Ohio, where there is an increasing concentration of power in a way that is so overt that people are getting, you know, sparked to action, and we want to be able to capitalize on that. I mean, you know, when we started Move to Amend, Occupy hadn't even happened yet, and I don't think Occupy is the be-all, end-all indicator that, you know, the revolution is around the corner. But it's a big deal that, you know, we had a whole bunch of people come to an action that was going to be just the typical, hey, everybody go, and instead there were tens of thousands of people, right? So those kinds of things might happen more and more, and we want to be in a position to use them and capitalize on them and to be part of them and to help spark them. And that means like having out a whole 10-year plan is, you know, isn't necessarily gonna, you have to be able to take into account things that are outside of our control that we can move on to.
Okay,
So,
I'm glad that folks have mentioned the North Carolina and the sort of the craziness of the right-wing legislature and what they did. That needs to be named. And of course, you talked about Ohio and Michigan and the emergency financial managers. That needs to be named. It equally needs to be named that in California, the Democratic Party has a 2/3 majority in both the state Senate and the state House, and a Democratic-controlled governor. And 2 years before, 3 years before, when there was a Republican governor, the state legislature, without those majorities, was able to pass a single-payer health care plan for the entire state, knowing that the Republican governor would veto it. Now that there is a Democratic-controlled governor, they can't even get it out of committee. So what I'm trying to name is the fact that for those of you who are thinking if we can just get D's in office, that actually means something, it's got to be very clear. If there is not a movement that can hold any elected official accountable, regardless of what party they're in, we're screwed, right? The second thing I want to point out is polling data on what people's opinion is not organized anything. I can give you polling data that shows the majority of Americans want out of Iraq and Afghanistan, or want sustainable clean energy, or want single like I can show you polling data on any number of issues that don't mean anything. It is only if you have organized people ready to actually hold folks accountable and use any number of tactics along the way that you actually have a movement that's worthy of being called a movement. And honestly, folks, we don't have that yet. We're building to it. I want to inspire you to work the way we're working to make that happen, but we need to be clear about where we are in this moment.
Yeah. Emma, do you want to, there's a bunch of chairs if you want to sit.
I'm just waiting for the rest of them to call me because I know they're going to get lost.
Okay, got it. Just want to make sure you had a place to
You
be.
know your crew.
All right, so I'm going to go over some of those interim actions that, and you'll see that they're about education, organizing, capacity building, because that's the stage that we're in right now. But before I do that, just want to flag for everyone, we use a program called Nation Builder. We've switched databases a couple different times. On the whole, we're relatively happy with Nation Builder now, and we're planning to stay there. We went to Nation Builder because they really put organizing front and center as a tool. We also like that they're nonpartisan, so a lot of the organizing databases that folks may have used if you've done political work are all probably things that only the Democratic Party can use. Yeah, exactly, those things. So that's not what we use. And we actually feel like Nation Builder is a bit more cutting edge than that. And we're one of their larger customers, so we've found that they are very interested in partnering with us and actually using us as a way to kind of try new things. So that's pretty exciting. So the database is available to all folks who are affiliate coordinators or volunteers with affiliates. And what it provides you and why it's really important is because there are 300,000 people plus who have signed the petition, and they have phones and email addresses, and they live in places, right, where you are. And so, but they're not necessarily at every meeting. So using that base of folks to work from, to turn them from passive allies into more active allies with Move to Amend and actually become volunteers with your organization, this is a starting point. And obviously there are a lot of other people outside, so you can, of the database that you want to get into it, but starting with these folks and doing more than just emailing them, but actually phoning them and developing relationships with them. And then what's nice about Nation Builder is that you can actually track those relationships and correspondence. So you can have multiple people doing it, and Kenneth can make a call to Mary Jane and have a great conversation with her, and then next week Lucy could be the one to follow up and pick up right where Kenneth left off, and it doesn't have to all be in some spreadsheet or in Kenneth's head or on his computer that nobody else can access, and then he goes away sometime and then all the data's gone, right? So what were you going to ask or say?
I was going to say, not with any pride, that I'm probably the only person in North Carolina that's using the Nation Builder database. And I'd like to say that on the MoveToAmend.org webinars, that there are at least 2, maybe 3 tutorials there about how to use the database. And one of the beauties of it is you can stop it and back it up and go over a point, stop it and back up and go over a point. And that's how I learned it, because it took about 3 times of going through there, doing the things like doing a email blast and getting to the database for your particular affiliate. Because once you get there, you've got all the names of all the people in there, and you can see the ones who don't take emails because they clicked off on that, and you can see the ones with the phone, and you've got a map so you can see where people are located in your area. It's just a ton of information that I haven't even begun to plumb the depths of, but I highly recommend it, and it's the way that Move to Amend can get organized.
Yeah, and we've invested a lot of resources into our database, both financially and time-wise, in terms of us creating the trainings. And it's one of the main things that when an affiliate calls us, that's what they need help with at the office. And so, we have an intern team, and myself and our outreach coordinator, Brian, are all able to help you one-on-one if you need that as well. We're happy to do it. However, and we recognize that it is a complex tool. It is a pretty sophisticated level of computer use to be able to, really use it well. And that might be something that's, brand new to you. So a couple of things with that. One, we've invested a lot in this, and we want you to use those investments. And so we're willing to do what's necessary to hold your hand for that. But also, it may be that, when we were talking about roles the other day, yesterday, that if you hate computers and you're barely on there, and you get mad when you have to check your email, you're probably not the person to be the database coordinator for your group, right? You're probably setting yourself up for a little bit of frustration, maybe some on our end too. So maybe that's okay for an interim, but to think about looking for somebody who actually likes that kind of stuff. And this is a new cutting edge tool. This company is very excited in developing itself, and so I guarantee there are people somewhere in your town who would love to have access to being able to learn this and to play with it. So keep an eye out for that. Don't become entrenched in doing it, especially if you resent it. Sir, yeah, Dave.
I suspect that my Columbus, Ohio Move to Amend is an affiliate.
Yeah, Michael Greenman has access, and there might be one other person as well. Who does
that was
too.
my question. As a volunteer with that affiliate, do I have access? I think you're
any active affiliate member there's a set of rules that you have to agree to follow, like not stealing the data and a bunch of other things, and how to use it, and then any active member in the group can get access. And we actually encourage multiple people to have access, because it actually works better if everyone who's active can actually go in and you're not relying on 1 or 2 people to do it.
And you're talking about Nation Building.
Yes, I am, yes. And then I'll talk about the website one sec, yeah.
So what is the delineation for who's an active member? Is it just somebody who signed a petition, or do you have to go through something?
No, it would be that you are, actively involved. Your affiliate would decide who an active member is. And it would be, so if you're not part of it, first of all, you have to be part of an affiliate to, only affiliates have access to the database. And then beyond that, if somebody is, going to meetings and consistently participating, then the affiliate basically, normally what happens is the affiliate says, who might want to do this, and somebody at a meeting or somebody is recruited to be a helper with this, a volunteer with this, and so it's kind of through the affiliate that you have access. And if you stop being active, then your access would go away. It's decentralized in the sense that really the affiliate decides. But you have to apply so we know who you are, and then everything you do is tied back to you, so if something starts to go awry, we can see that. And affiliates don't have total ability to be in every part of the database. You can't export data, for example. That's our safeguard on making sure that, you know, anybody and everybody isn't going to just take it away. Yeah.
Is there an affiliate group in Richmond, Virginia?
There is not an active group in Richmond, Virginia right now. The
So
only
Virginia does not have any.
Annandale has an affiliate.
I'm sorry.
Annandale has
Okay.
an affiliate, and that's the only one in Virginia right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this? Okay, so then the last thing here is this Move to Amend website resource as well. Y'all, there's chairs if you want to come in. There's 3 there, and there's 1 here. The website is another resource that we've invested a significant amount in. It's not quite, it's a, the website uses Drupal, which is an open source platform. And so we have a little bit more control over it because we custom designed it. And so that means that it's a little bit easier to use than Nation Builder actually, because it's set up, you know, specifically, you can only see the stuff that applies to you, and you don't need to worry about everything else going on and all that. So what the website, every affiliate has a page on the website, and we actually discourage you from having your own separate website because then you're creating duplicate tasks for yourself there. So the page is meant to basically serve as like your website for your group, and you can post announcements and events. You can make a custom, you know, logo for your area if you want. You can tie it to a Facebook page or a Twitter feed or both. And you want to, one of the things that's required in order to be considered an active affiliate is to use that page and to keep it current. So to post an announcement, say at least once a month, you know, about what's going on, give like a report or exciting something happening that you're doing, to post all your meetings and other events on there, and then those also get on the national calendar as well, so they're in both places. And then all of your content feeds automatically onto the state page. So even if somebody doesn't know that there's an affiliate in Asheville, they know they live in North Carolina, so they might just go there, and then they could see the content, and then they could click into the Asheville page and get the contact info for the affiliate coordinator and a phone number, which is there, and then an email address, which the emails all go into Nation Builder. So that's another reason why you definitely want to have Nation Builder, because when people write you emails, you can't, the only way to check those is in Nation Builder. Does that make sense? And that is a sticking point for a lot of people, but the reason why is because we have had folks have Gmail addresses that just disappeared, and then everything is gone, and there's no way for us to see that folks are trying to contact them, and it became a mess. So everything goes through Nation Builder. And when you become an affiliate, then I can talk to you about the affiliate support page. So I'm just going to blow through these really quick because it's getting a little hot in here. The Pledge to Amend campaign was an effort that we were doing this spring. It actually officially kind of came to an end with August. However, all the resources are there, and there's no reason why anybody couldn't, and we set it up that way on purpose, where folks could pick this up at any point. So what the Pledge to Amend campaign is targeting state legislators, not so much federal representatives, but state legislators, to begin relationships with them to get them to pledge to support the We the People amendment. And then specifically, we have excuse me, model language for state legislation that we would like to see introduced in 2014 and on in a number of states. Our model, which didn't exactly use the perfect language, but pretty close, is Minnesota. And what this language says, you know that there have been a lot of states that have passed resolutions. A resolution is a non-binding declaration for or against something, right? So that's good, but it's non-binding, so it doesn't really hold anybody to anything. It's just what that given legislators or city council believe in the moment. And what's great about it is that it's an organizing tool to get people plugged in, right? So I'm not at all denigrating that tactic. That's still one of our primary tactics. However, in the interest of upping the ante, in states where there have been a lot of resolutions that have passed at the local level, where we want to build up to is state action, and rather than going for resolutions, our ideal is that at the state legislature level, they actually pass an act And the act says, we, the state legislature of, in this case, Minnesota, call on Congress to pass the We the People amendment and send it to the states for ratification by X date. And if they have not done so by that date, then in passing this act, we are declaring that we will call for a constitutional convention to pass this amendment. And so that actually made it through the Senate in Minnesota this year. Our primary champion was a state senator. Our suggested goal is 2 to 3 years of when the deadline that you give them. He really wanted to do it faster, so he originally said 6 months. And I think, you know, he was savvy. He was saying, if I say 6 months, then whatever the compromise will be. But the compromise ended up being 7 years, which we feel like is too long. So, but that could always be gone back to and amended. So it made it through the Senate, and it was on its way to making its way through the House. But then, actually, excuse me, a number of Democrats who had pledged support, I think maybe thinking that it wasn't going to get through the Senate, started to kind of pull their support, and in the interest of not letting it die, the sponsor in the House decided to pull it, and because they have a 2-year cycle, it'll actually come up again next year. And we were kind of glad about that, honestly, in some ways, because it all happened a lot faster than our folks expected it to. We kind of wanted it to be like an example that was out there, and then before we knew it, it had passed through the Senate, and our Minnesota folks kind of felt like they wanted more time to really make sure the public knew about it, and they hadn't had that opportunity yet. And so this gives them another year to do that. So we'll see what happens with it. Right now it says 7 years. It's also been introduced in Wisconsin the year before, but we knew that that would be just sort of symbolic. And we're looking at it happening in some other states in 2014. So here in the
question about that. If a state passes that in their general assembly or their state legislature, is there a deadline like what happened with the women's rights or the ERA? Is there a deadline that?
Not inherently. The ERA that passed through Congress had a timeline on it. And that was actually one of the ways that was a compromise that was unfortunate, right? Because it meant that it timed out. But we would definitely push very hard for the if the Congress route is how it goes, that the We the People Amendment not have a timeline, so that, you know, but that's something that just gets decided in Congress. The March Against Corruption is, we are not at this time participating at the national level, but some of our affiliates are. And I mean, we do have some concerns about how it's still kind of all just money and politics rhetoric. So, and then on the second piece, yeah, a lot of our affiliates who are in those states are doing that work to go back for 2014. Yeah.
This is back to the last page about the banner, the May 10th banner. Well, an overpass. Do you have to get permission from somebody to do that?
Not generally. So the way the banners are set up, you don't want to attach them to anything. That would be not the way to do it. So they're designed so that they can be held, and you use like deer fencing and then attach the letters and then PVC pipe. So they're super lightweight, and even though they're very big, because the wind can just blow through the deer fencing. And then you just hold it on an overpass. So the only thing is you want to make sure that you're, picking an overpass where there's enough room to stand and you're not blocking like a sidewalk or something like that, and it's not dangerous, and the highway patrol isn't going to.
So it has to be manned. You don't just hang it.
Right. No. Yeah. It's actually held. And so depending on where you are, you might actually have like a walkway overpass. That's ideal, because then you could actually like petition people who are going by as well, which is like what they do in our community. But yeah.
You might have to get a permit.
So far, we have not had any instances of having to get a permit, and I go on the better to ask forgiveness than permission model. So you might have somebody tell you, oh, you need to get a permit, but we haven't had anybody like have any arrest situation. And if you're worried about that, you just, if they tell you you have to go, then you go, and then maybe do some research to figure out whether they were right or wrong. But if you, just walk away. But we have had, dozens of places do this. In St. Paul, they do it twice a month, and they've had no problem. So, yeah.
I want to encourage everybody, especially that's just getting started. You know, Mark Twain said that he wants to be in Kentucky at the end of the world because everything happens there 20 years later. I sort of hold to that because I can never get things done by the time National Leadership Council would like for me to get them done. We're behind, you know, we're way behind. We haven't nearly finished the Move to Amend campaign. Is that the campaign? No,
The Pledge to Amend.
yeah,
right?
Pledge to Amend campaign. And I really wish we had done the We the People Listen campaign before we even started that. And so we're now into the We the People Listen campaign. And that has really gotten more energy going than anything else that we've had. My point is this. These folks are organizers par excellence.
Oh.
And they
Thank you, Joy.
give you step by step of everything you need to do. They are the greatest resource you could have. None of the other organizations are providing this kind of instruction and assistance. And it doesn't matter if you do this a year from now. If you just do it how you can build, and that doesn't bother them.
No, not at all. And I would definitely, actually, even though we started this campaign first, I would agree with Joy that starting with the Listen campaign is definitely better. And we started this because there were folks who were going to state legislators anyway, because there's a constant tension, you know. It's like, yes, we do want to get this done soon, and people are getting, you know, like, hey, let's just shortcut and go there. And so we were like, all right, well, people we can't control you. So if we're going to do that, let's at least do that in a way that's about helping to like build a movement, not short circuit it. So we put this together, but really what we're most excited about for this phase right now is something like the We the People Listen, and the Pledge to Amend comes later. But there are some states that have passed a number of resolutions at the local level, and it does make sense for them to be up at the state level, and so we wanted to be available for that. But like Joy said, kind of whenever and however you need to do this is fine. We know you're all volunteers, and we can sympathize with that because most of us are too. And so the trick is to make sure that we're moving along and growing, but also not burning ourselves out, because we need to stick with this for the long haul.
And let me jump in, Caitlin. First, just to say thank you, Joy. I feel like I'm blushing up here by the just super kind words. And to really underscore that all of these things that we're laying out, we think of these like as a menu of options. I don't know of a single one of our affiliates that we could actually say is like blowing and glowing on every single one of these, right? So you shouldn't feel obliged or Joy, like the timeline on how you're doing it. And ideally, what our hope is that in every local group, there might be a core group of people who are like, man, I'm jazzed about Pledge to Amend. Others are like, no, I'm jazzed about giving presentations to local groups and organizations and collecting endorsements. No, I'm jazzed about the We the People Listen campaign. No, I'm jazzed about just the bannering. Or no, I'm jazzed about the festivals and tabling. Get my point? Like the thing is, like we're trying to create a space where there is like exciting work for everybody to do the thing that makes the most sense to you, provided that you are committed to the core principles and values that the Move to Amend has put forth on movement building and anti-oppression network and framing, so we build a multiracial movement for real power, and that the constitutional amendment that we're proposing abolishes all constitutional rights for all artificial entities, and money is not speech. So there are a couple of things there are people, and maybe like you've got friends who want to work on other stuff. We're not saying don't do that. We're saying you can't. The one thing you can't do is say that you're moved to amend and compromise the principles, values, or the goals that we've set forward. But other than that, man, like it's a wide open thing, and let's collaborate in whatever way makes sense.
So,
Caitlin, you had Lucy is.
Did I? Okay.
You must-
Well, I just wanted to ask a question, because my understanding, we want those two ingredients, definitely, but we also want them through a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Right.
And a lot of the movements or the efforts don't include that.
How about that?
Yeah, and so I'm trying to make sure whatever acknowledge is that.
Yep.
And
Yes, no, that's-
I told Johannes on the phone the other day that the National Occupier Convention this summer, just now, has endorsed.
Yes.
We'll
that's
talk
right.
about that in just a
But
moment.
they did not, they said they also were in solidarity with all the other movements.
Yeah.
Which they took it away almost as soon as they said it away.
Well,
It's more complicated. We'll talk about that in a
It's
moment.
kind of complicated, but it was significant that Occupy at their national gathering did endorse our 2 points that we're supporting Amend and Amend. Okay, so how are you guys doing? It's hella hot.
I think it's quaint that she thinks this is hot.
Well, I can see all these horse-sweating faces, and they're the ones who are from here. So great, fine. David, are you going to take it away now on the other groups?
I can if you. The
Or
folks
do we
need a break. I mean, how we doing?
Is it warm? Is it cool?
I think it's
Yeah,
let's
There's
go.
air outside.
right.
I'm trying to turn the air conditioner on.
So,
We can do that.
Yeah, there's a remote over there on the table.
I
I don't know if it works.
so there are 2 things. One, sort of other groups. I'm going to start with what I'm most excited about, and tell you the kind of genuine partnerships and collaborations that we have with other groups that are fitting completely within our commitment to an anti-oppression framework, that are actually collaborating with us, and we think are pretty clear, are moving in the direction of abolishing all corporate constitutional rights and money is not speech. I want to start by actually talking about the ones that we're working very well with. The first is the U.S. Social Forum. Does anybody know, can anybody give me a 1-sentence or 2-sentence what the U.S. Social Forum is? Go ahead.
The still existing left wing in America?
George, are you trying to wave to me, or no, you're getting that going? All right, so the U.S. Social Forum is a people of color-led, queer-led, immigrant-led, women-led, oppressed communities-led effort to actually build a place for convening and conversation that comes out of the World Social Forum. If folks think that that's left, so be it. I think that's justice. But what to me is most important is that it's actually led by exploited, oppressed communities. Most people didn't think that was even possible. In 2007, we got together. We were hoping 5,000 people would come. We went to Atlanta, Georgia. 15 to 17,000 people came. The next year, the next time, Detroit. We were in Detroit in 2010. 2010. We were like, man, could we maybe get close to that number again? We had just under 20,000 people show up. Now we're actually, the tagline for the U.S. Social Forum is from convergence to coherence. It's very clear that there is an agreement and an understanding that we need to not just converge in space and share best practices, but actually cohere strategies and plans that move towards independent political action. That is, independent from the ruling elite, independent from the 2 establishment parties, and actually make demands and hold them accountable for it. It just so happens that George Friday and David Cobb both are on the National Planning Committee of the U.S. Social Forum. We are collaborating with them in a very positive way. These People's Movement Assemblies are beginning to unfold. That leads me to Caitlin already mentioned the Highlander, but the fact that, like y'all know can anybody give me a 1-sentence, like, what is Highlander?
Miles Horton started it. He took off from the democracy schools in Denmark, and he came over here, started, I think it was with union organizing.
Yep.
Teaching people how to, organize and advocate for their own needs.
And get this, it's also where Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks were trained in strategies and tactics for a long-term goal to actually end the apartheid in the United States of America, right? And they had a legal strategy, they had a movement building strategy, they had a media strategy, they actually had all these strategies. They had a direct action strategy. I mean, the point is that Highlander is inviting Move to Amend to actually do a People's Movement Assembly at their upcoming anniversary. I know, Joy, you're planning on going, and I really encourage it to just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. That place is just dripping with it. I'm getting a little emotional every time I go there and know that I'm sitting in the same spot where people who were serious about ending American apartheid Like that's the legacy I want to be part of, and they're actually partnering with us. Yes.
When is that?
September 20 through 21st. So in addition to the U.S. Social Forum and Highlander, I also want to just acknowledge the Pachamama Alliance, which Steve gave a little bit about, but that's a group that's actually partnered with us, that we've collaborated together. It's taken some time to really sort of unfold, but they have now named Move to Amend one of their game changers at these Awakening the Dreamer symposiums. And for the young folks in the crowd, they also have one that is very specifically targeted to basically teenagers through sort of mid-20s, early 30s. It's called Generation Waking Up. And what's exciting to us is that they've identified climate change and Move to Amend as the two groups to say, like, once you're awake, let's do some shit, right? And so we're partnering with them in a very positive way. The Occupy National Gathering, I think, is super relevant because, you know, Lucy, like, to be in solidarity with, like, because I was there, we've been at Occupy, it's no surprise. Like, Move to Amend would never dare to speak for Occupy, but we've got a long history of collaborating with Occupy for all the bumps and bruises and warts that come along with it, but we're in it with them, right? As George likes to say all the time, like, we may fuss, but we're in it, right? We're in it. And George and I have fussed with one another, but we're in it. And that's the kind of collaboration that we're engaged with Occupy. What came out of the national gathering in Kalamazoo, we actually did, Move to Amend did a People's Movement Assembly with the U.S. Social Forum actually there at the national gathering. Daniel Lee of Occupy LA and the national leadership team and I did a Move to Amend presentation there. We've been at lots of Occupy different things. So we didn't ask for it. I didn't actually even think it was like the thing to do to ask for a solidarity statement because I know what Occupy is, right? But they went through their process, grappled and and they originally, people originally putting it forward wanted to actually say Move to Amend. To get consensus with the group of organizers, it became, well, we'll stick with no artificial entities have constitutional rights, money is not speech, and we'll be in solidarity with any group working on those. So it actually was quite significant, Lucy, and I think an ongoing thing. We're partnering with the Bill of Rights Defense Committee in this next year to be able to go into communities to have Move to Amend, which is mostly white folks, right? But to partner with brown and black-skinned folks who were at the brunt of the kind of stop and frisk and assault on civil liberties, as well as the immigrant communities, where Bill of Rights Defense Committee and their constituency and Move to Amend and our constituencies do joint events where we say, oh, by the way, the corporatization of detention centers and the criminal justice system or criminal injustice system and so forth, it's the same struggle, right? And so that's another thing that is a commitment to our anti-oppression, but also makes the links and make it clear that we need a democracy movement where every person is a person with constitutional rights and corporations are not. That's super exciting. We've got the Hip Hop Congress I shared with Matt and his colleagues from UNC Wilmington. We're going to be rolling out a What the Bleep Happened to Hip Hop, where we actually talk about the corporatization of that art form and that cultural expression, which actually did not begin as a bunch of misogynistic, violence, et cetera, et cetera. It actually was a very uplifting experience, a very clear cultural experience that came out of a particular context. We're partnering with the Hip Hop Congress and their executive director to do a tour /forum /concert /festival series in 2014. Those are the, and then Workers United, SEIU, have invited us to actually start to do some things with them. We're going in November to their annual meeting. They're showcasing us, so it's organized labor inviting us into the House of Labor to begin to partner and collaborate. Again, incredibly exciting, and it's all stuff that's taken time to actually build trust. And we were talking to you yesterday about what it is to actually identify allies, build relationships. You have to build relationships based on trust, right? Conduct matters. How you conduct yourself matters. And so you could do this too at the local level. I want to just hit a couple of other really quickly. There's Roots and Remedies that we're going to be targeting. There's the Southern Human Rights Organizing Conference that we'll be going to, the Student Power Convergence. So there's all these groups.
All this stuff will kind of be announced as it develops.
Yeah. But this is the convergence, and y'all are here, right? So you get the taste for what is in the works on 2014. Very quickly, also just to hit, We do have some really good relationships with some of People's Media that's developing. Many of you know that Tom Hartman, man, if we were a corporation and we had shares, we'd owe that dude stock.
Amen.
Right? I mean, like I don't think that we have a single better proponent than Tom Hartman. Many of us have actually, at the National Leadership Team, have been on his program. Basically, anytime we're in D.C., we have an open invitation to go onto that program. We also have developed a really good relationship with Occupy.com, which aspires to be a clearinghouse for Occupy and Occupy-related written material, and we are now in a capacity to have all of our stuff that we put out to immediately go up on there. We've basically also been acknowledged as Common Dreams, like almost anything that either Caitlin or George or Laura, any of our national leadership teams submit, we're now to the point where Common Dreams basically covers us and posts our opinion and analysis pieces on an ongoing way. And then lastly, the one that's most developed is Op-Ed News, where we are now one of their special contributor or whatever. So those are the ones where the independent media that we at national level that we've got the best relationships with, and of course community radio and so forth is always ongoing. So before I get into the other big national groups, I want to stop. I know I went fast, and see if there's any comments or questions on what you just heard about the ongoing relationships or partnerships.
I would love for you to fill in between Workers United, SEIU, and Tom Hartman. There were two of them.
The Southern Human Rights Organizing Conference and the Student Power Convergence. Anybody else?
Okay, so this line is a significant line. Be prepared.
Okay. So let me actually get this because I think.
Sure.
So Caitlin just sort of captured all the partnerships that we actually are collaborating in a positive and productive manner. So again, I believe in just actually telling the truth. Shocking, right? But it served us in good stead as organizers to actually build those kind of trust relationships. The line you can see right here, United for the People. And actually, Caitlin, I think that we should add Wolfpack, even though they're not part of that, right? And Represent Us / United Republic. But part of United for the People, from the very beginning, again, Move to Amend was formed in 2010. We came out of a decade, 15, 20 years of work that many of us have been working on corporate constitutional rights. So this wasn't a surprise to us, actually. We expected it. What we didn't expect was the movement to sort of, the moment, the historic moment is ready, right? And so there are some of us who have been building and trying to actually prepare for this moment for a while. So I want to back up just a moment and say almost everything on our menu of options actually came from people like you who pushed us to they wanted to do something. And sometimes, the things that people want to do, we're like, you want to do that, do it. But sometimes they're so brilliant that we're like, oh my God, yes. And I should have mentioned the Unitarian Universalists again as an example. I didn't think that we were ready for that. Judith said, me neither. But Michael Greenman did, and others did, right? And so they pushed up faster. Most of these groups are DC-based groups. They're all part of a constellation called United for the People. If you go to the website United for the People, you'll actually see these.
Which includes Move to Amend.
Which includes Move to Amend. Here is the bottom line. Public Citizen uses the word corporate personhood, but everything that they do in every way is very clear. They're just about money and elections. We think that's dishonest. We would appreciate them if they would actually say, look, we're just going to be about getting money out of elections, and then we can relate to them the way we can relate to other groups that are honest about what they're for. But they're using corporate personhood, but none of their conduct reflects that they have actually any commitment to abolishing corporate constitutional rights. In fact, they were the ones who actually pushed back on and demanded that Bernie Sanders originally include an exemption for nonprofits and a proposed constitutional amendments. Nonprofits like Citizens United, that would create a loophole that you could drive a Mack truck of money through to make it virtually irrelevant. So, we just named that, and as a result, we're not.
We have partnered with them from time to time, but it is increasingly difficult because we don't share the same goals, but we don't really feel like they are honest with their people about what their goals are. And so at this point, we've kind of split, and I would say out of all of these groups where we have the most tension is with Public Citizen over that exemption that we feel like is, makes it meadowness, and they, strongly disagree.
But they try not to actually bring it up because, you have to ask them why, but there are still some of our local groups that are still trying to partner with them, and we would not tell you not to partner with them. I'm giving you honest information about where we are at the national level. The next group is People for the American Way, who actually invested some time and resource in creating this constellation. The bottom line is that they don't they support, quote, a constitutional remedy. They don't take any public position on, whether it's just money elections or corporate personhood. They just said some constitutional remedy to deal with Citizens United. What I can tell you very candidly is that their entire board of directors are just about money and elections. But to their credit, they have not tried to, they're not disingenuous, right? They're very honest about, we think that there needs to be some constitutional remedy, and even though we are less in agreement in terms of goals because of their conduct of their staff, and I just really want to lift up Marge Baker, who is their vice president. That's somebody who I struggle with all the time, but I'm like in it to the end with her because she's honest with me, and that means a lot to me. So that's where People for the American Way are. The bottom line is they don't have much capacity. They've got.
Well, they have a ton of capacity, but they don't have any grassroots.
Okay, they don't have any grassroots capacity. Like, they got big money, is what they got, and they got like snazzy DC offices that they own, and they got like well-paid lobbyists that are all on the Hill. So that's really all they are, is a DC-based group. And bottom line, they're also a Democratic Party front group. There's just no really getting around that. Like the People for the American Way will never do anything that the Democratic Party leadership has not actually approved. Right, Steve? Yeah. And you should. I wish y'all could see Steve. He's not just faking to say that. He's like this. It's like, I wish it wasn't true, right? I wish that those capacities could be put to, or those resources could be put to something else. But that's where that is. The next group that's part of United for the People is Common Cause. Many of you know Common Cause, that came out of the 70s, did great work, and we're really the cutting edge group around money in elections and corporate influence writ large, but they don't actually have much of an anti-oppression or an anti-racist analysis. In fact, to the contrary, most people of color that I know that engage with them find it frustrating. So I just want to be honest about that. The other thing, though, that I want to say is that nationally, Common Cause, sadly, their executive director, Bob Edgar, passed away suddenly. The person who was working on their and so, just lift that up as a moment of sympathy for somebody taken away very early in his life. But because of that, and the fact that their campaigner, who was basically the national coordinator of all of their constitutional stuff, has resigned from Common Cause in California and is now running for Secretary of State there. Common Cause is still in a big state of flux. I can tell you this. Common Cause has state networks in a pretty decent way in many states. We've had a difficult time with the national because, frankly, they've been disingenuous with us as well, and I could give you, specific examples should people want it. But we've had great relationships in some state Common Causes. I want to really acknowledge Massachusetts, I think, and Minnesota as places where they were like super fantastic to work with. We've also been straight up lied to in other states, Colorado. It was like they lied to us about what they were going to do there. And so, again, but the state chapters of Common Cause are completely independent because National Common Cause has said very clearly that we're going to allow state groups to do whatever they want with constitutional remedies. Some are partnering with Move to Amend because local people within Common Cause are forcing it. Some are freaked out by our, abolish all corporate constitutional rights because we're too radical. justice might broke out. That one step too far? You ran it in.
No.
No. Thank you, Dan. So that's common cause. The last group that's actually part of the United for the People is Free Speech for People. This is a group that, like, on its face, we should actually be working most closely with, frankly, because they actually have 2 congressional amendments that they're actually supporting. One, corporations don't have constitutional rights. The second, separate one, money is not speech. Now, we think that the language could be stronger in either one of those, but in a nutshell, they're basically the right thing, but they have committed to keeping them separate. We think that's a profound tactical mistake, and that it's basically inviting one of them, corporate personhood, to be thrown under the bus as a sacrificial lamb, right? I mean, anybody who's done any negotiating ever can actually see where this is actually going to go. They insist, however, that no, this is just tactics because we think that we can get support for one over the other.
The one that Udall is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Udall is the money is not speech one. Yeah. And then McGovern is the corporate constitutional rights one. And I just want to say a little bit more about Free Speech for People because they are a weird anomaly. They are not in DC. They are. They were formed also in response to Citizens United. Jeff Clements wrote the book that we have here, right? Jeff Clements was at the founding meeting of Move to Amend. And
we invited him and them.
Yeah, and then John Bonifaz is their other founder, who was David's attorney when David sued for the Ohio recount. So we have a long history with these 2 guys. They're both very brilliant lawyers, well-spoken, good writers, everything. Originally, their amendment language was just that the constitutional rights should not apply to corporations for the First Amendment.
Hence,
and they actually
free
got
speech for people.
Right, the Free Speech for People. They got a lot of flack from that because there was a lot of overlap of Move to Amend folks, and we actually also pushed on them pretty hard in a public way. Then they did this survey where they asked, which one would you support, the one we've got or the McGovern one that they have now, and resoundingly, it was like 95% of their membership said the one that they have now, so they switched. They then did not have the free speech for people or money is not speech at all, but then, Move to Amend kind of pushed and said, well, you can't leave out the individuals. So then they said, okay, fine, we'll have the second one. And every single resolution that they've worked on still has the First Amendment should not apply to corporations. So notwithstanding my deep respect for both of these guys and the other folks who work at this organization, it is confusing what is going on with them, and it is not consistent, and that troubles us because why would that be if they're so on board that they've had to change all this time and that they're so susceptible to just pressure, and what about other pressure? So yeah.
Is McGovern from Connecticut?
He's from Massachusetts. And both John and Jeff, that's where they're from as well, and they have strong ties in Massachusetts. So pretty much Free Speech for People has like zero organizing, grassroots capacity. It's 2 lawyers at the top, and then there's some other staff members as administrators. They did, though, work with Udall and the Montana guy. Why am I blanking? Tester, yes, on the other amendment in the Senate. And they have been working on conservatives, and that's part of why they say that they should be different, because conservatives are not, as unified on putting those 2 points together. So they did, for example, just do like a whole survey of Republicans, and they do have some cross-partisan endorsements of their amendments. And so what we've said is like, okay, they can be working on that angle, but we really don't like overlap with them in a lot of ways because they have no ground game anywhere except for in Massachusetts, and we did partner with them in Massachusetts. And that's also part of, to go back to Public Citizen, where a lot of the tension is Public Citizen keeps on kind of going into the areas where Move to Amend is and doing the same tactics. And so it causes a lot of friction because people are then like, well, wait a minute, what are these 2 groups and why are they doing the same thing but different? And it's confusing. So Free Speech for People is sort of to the side because we don't really have to interact with them that much, so the conflict doesn't really need to.
It doesn't come up very much, but the other thing that is in conflict is that they don't talk about it very much publicly, but like I've talked to both of them extensively, and they are absolutely 100% committed to only going through Congress. They are scared of a constitutional convention because their fear that the right wing would take it over, that gay rights would be under the chopping block, that abortion, women's right to choose, like a whole series of things, all totally valid concerns, by the way, right? And if we don't build a movement,
and they don't agree with our strategy around doing movement building because they don't have confidence that you can build or deal with anti-oppression and centralized race effectively, given the mentality of white folks. I don't know. They just don't have confidence that their peers, other white people like them, will effectively build a movement to have the power to have the kind of constitutional convention we would want.
Yes.
So free speech for people, but people could be interpreted as corporation too.
No, they're very good. It's
For
public
the people
citizen that's
that
about
are
the exemption.
humans.
Free speech for people
Flesh.
is very good about the human beings equaling people, and their language is fine. It's more about methods where there's difference.
Right, I see Tom and then Kate. I want to be clear, like on the day-to-day, this comes up almost never, right? I'm on the road between half to 2/3 of my life doing presentations. Between the average size is 35 to 50, sometimes over 100 people. Almost never do any of these groups come up, right? So we're happy to, because y'all are core organizers, to give you our
We're doing inside
experience.
baseball right now.
But just be clear, this is super inside baseball, and if you're who cares?
That's
cool.
fine.
That's totally fine.
That's totally cool.
So Tom and then Kate.
I met with a representative from Eastern North Carolina last week, Walter Jones, and because I wanted to approach him about moving in, and he said he had been contacted by McGovern. So what I have right now is thinking of, is there any, do you guys have any sort of, I know you've got the website, and I gave him the page off the website that gave the listings of the different bills that had been introduced and concerns you had about each. But I'm seriously thinking about re-engaging him after this weekend with some of those highlights, but it would seem to me that maybe some sort of outreach towards members of Congress, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To keep them from being confused, because they can be as confused as anybody else.
Many of them are even more confused. I see your hand, Joyce, so let me answer this very quickly. We have a Congress Watch Committee at Move to Mend where we are for people who are super excited about trying to lobby congressional representatives to get support for the We the People amendment that Nolan and Pocan have introduced. That's available, and we make that available to you. And so we can definitely do that. Is this a direct response, Joy?
Yes.
Go ahead, and then I'll get you, Kate.
I get the question quite often about, is this the one that, and I say, there are several out there, but ours is the only one that attacks both roots of the problem, and if we're going to put this much energy into something, we want it to count.
As Pam McMichael of Highlander said, and I thought this was a brilliant way to say it, because I'm totally going to steal this, so I want to give her credit right now, so that I can
Because
say
that will never happen again.
because it'll never happen again. People will think I'm very clever.
I have had many things
Right?
that
She
he
knows.
says.
But I give her credit the first time. I feel like that'll,
Unless you're in the room.
unless you're in the room, then I always do.
No, not necessarily.
If I think I have to. Here's the bottom line. Any movement that is strong enough to amend the U.S. Constitution is strong enough to rewrite the Constitution.
That's what's up.
Right? That's a brilliant way to actually, if our movement is actually capable, like Iceland, like Latin America, Calabar in Africa, there are examples of what movements actually that are serious look like about actually taking and exercising power in a genuine democratic way. That's what I want to be part of. Kate.
Yes, could you briefly tell me why a public citizen wants an exemption for nonprofits? Why are they afraid of this?
I don't know.
No, you'd have to ask them that. I mean, I think it's unfair. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, that, go ahead, Kayla. I mean-
They're concerned about their own constitutional rights as an organization. I mean, we had a private meeting with all of these groups relatively recently, and that was very clear that they're concerned about nonprofit corporations' rights. And, you know, free speech for people and Move to Amend, where they're saying, look, that doesn't matter. You can take care of privileges and powers legislatively, and this is too important to hold on to. And also, you don't exercise those rights. You know, like, it doesn't even work that way. And they were just very confused. And it was weird because I would say they were also confused and hadn't done their homework.
They hadn't done their homework.
No,
that's
Rob
true.
has not done his homework on understanding corporate constitutional rights. He thinks he has, but he is not. I'm talking about the executive director of the organization, who is a lawyer. So, you know, but to go deeper than that, you have to ask them, and I encourage you to do so, because a lot of people don't even realize that they're requiring this exemption.
Dan? All right, go ahead, Kate. You have a follow-up?
If they have some kind of valid argument, I'm going to run into.
I have not heard of any that I think, and we have our written up position on the website why neither nonprofit.
There are some red herring arguments, and we have addressed all of them on that article.
So I've got Dan and then Chris. So we still got lots of other stuff to do. So I feel like we're getting into the weeds, but that's okay. I just want to like name it. Dan.
Yeah, I'm concerned about trying to partner with people of color in my community and coming off as a class white male. Right? One thing I can think of doing is starting to talk with people that I know from our social justice work through the youth who know us and what do I do? And what else would you suggest?
Well, that was the whole part of yesterday, right? And we don't have time to go into that, but I can tell you, number one, the fact that you are concerned about being perceived as and acting like a privileged upper class white male is the first step in the right direction. And I just want to acknowledge that as one, well, poor but white male to another, right? So for that. The second thing that I'll just go ahead and get into very quickly is that we are rolling out an affiliate curriculum on anti-oppression work. This is probably I didn't actually talk about it because we're not really there yet. We're finalizing and polishing it.
It starts this month, and
Yeah.
but it's for folks who are part of the affiliate process. So there's some readings and kind of analysis building, and then it'll go into tools. But I think you're absolutely right to start with folks you already know and have relationships with. And then the other thing that some folks have done when they haven't necessarily known these organizations is meet to invite to coffee or to lunch, you know, leaders with organizations that are actually already, you know, in place doing organizing work, and to just have a conversation and say, I want to know about what you're working on. Here's what we're working on. Is there any way that we might be able to work together? And, you know, yes, it is important to be concerned about how you're going to come across and to be intentional, but at the same time, we're all just human beings, right? So imagine if another person contacts you from another group and says, hey, we'd like to work together. We have some resources to bring to the table. What are your resources? You know, I mean, you're like, yeah, this is great. So starting that way, not going to other people's meetings and trying to get an announcement like, I'm with Move to Amend, signed our petition. That is not a good way to do it. But meeting one-on-one, or going to a meeting and just saying, hey, I'm with Move to Amend, be transparent about who you are. I'm with Move to Amend. I'm here to listen, find out what y'all are doing. We're interested in your work. And so, you know, I'm a delegate that's just been sent to observe and find out what y'all are working on. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. And then just listen for a couple meetings. And then you'll start to hear where the connections might be, what folks are bringing up that might have a tie to corporate power. And then you'll have started to build the relationships where that would be a reasonable thing to broach.
Chris?
So,
and it's not ideal to go to folks that you know, even on the social justice committee, and say, I want to do outreach to communities of color. You're a person of color. Tell me what to do. Don't do that.
Chris?
In regards to the nonprofit organizations, one of the concern that you have heard is about the funding. Could this affect your funding as far as, because a lot of nonprofit organizations do wonderful things, but they also get money from states, you know, local,
Sure.
for doing those things. Is that
Money is a big part of it, and it's probably important to recognize that every one of the groups that we've just talked about, two other things, that they're all basically DC-based groups, and they're all heavily connected to the major funders that are also major funders of the Democratic Party leadership. So that's just the reality. I see all these hands going up. We're going to run out of time for the small group work.
Well, why don't you do one more
I'm
stack
gonna do,
round?
this is the last stack, so if you want to say anything about this subject, now's the time to raise your hand. 1, 2, the stack is closed.
Having constitutional rights have not prevented certain unions, Acorn, from being attacked by Congress. Now, what rights are they, worried about losing when they got Congress, jumping on their necks?
Can I say something about that? So I think it's really important to understand that this is not like all of the nonprofits of the world. These are folks who are entrenched in Washington, D.C. They believe that you get incremental, tiny little pieces of change by negotiating with members of Congress, which, like, what does that even leave us, right? And that is just the realm that they're coming from. So there's fear, but it also is not so much fear of like what's going to happen to them. I think it's like fear of the potential of like if we actually were more powerful and exercised our power the way that we might, what would that look like? Oh my God, what would happen? And they're entrenched because their jobs are committed to this, and they're good people, they mean well, but they've got blinders on about what's possible, and that's why they really, it doesn't even make sense for us to partner with them, because their whole paradigm of how change happens is totally different than ours. But you are going to interact with them, so we're trying to give you the backstory so that you're not confused and you kind of know what to do or how to explain it to somebody else who asks.
Right. We're not trying to be adversarial with these groups, but we relate to every one of these groups, but some of them with the more arm's length. I mean, when I was a trial lawyer, my general modus operandi was if I was dealing with somebody who was an opposing counsel, I trusted her or him to their word about evidentiary matters, discovery matters, and so forth, until I got lied to one time, and then everything else had to be in writing. Everything. Right?
That's great.
And that was how I conducted myself. And within the circle of trial lawyers in Harris County and Houston, Texas, I became known for that reputation, right? That's how I'm treating these folks. Yes?
Okay, two parts to this. One, tax exemption for nonprofits. It's not a constitutional issue, is it?
No.
That's part of IRS law.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so their tax exempt status wouldn't end with
Unaffected, yes.
Unaffected.
Okay. Second thing is, I forget the number of the amendment, but the one that allowed for popular voter senators only passed after it looked like there was going to be a constitutional convention.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so yeah, you've hit on another piece, which is we could definitely start to go this route of the threat, and then maybe Congress, because it's not like Congress wants a precedent of constitutional conventions. So yes, that is definitely a route we could go, and that's part of why we're starting to say, well, let's start to drum up that pressure.
But let's also be clear not to accept, okay, let's just have a constitutional amendment that gets money out of elections but keeps every other institution of power and the legal system and corporate constitutional rights entrenched. That is a problem, right? And I want to tell the quick story about Seneca Falls, New York, the birth of what we've been taught to understand and know as the women's suffrage movement. But you know what? When they gathered together in Seneca Falls, everybody in that room, and by the way, that room is about 2 times the size of the Solidarity Center, right? I've been there. Anybody else been to that museum? It's a chilling, incredible place to go, right? But here's the thing. They gathered as people who believed themselves to be part of a human rights movement. And they wanted to abolish slavery because it was immoral, and they wanted to guarantee equal rights for all sexes at the time, what we would think of probably today as gender, but they wanted equal rights for women. They made a tactical decision there. There was a group, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Frederick Douglass, Alice Paul, who said, we're a human rights movement, let's call for abolishing slavery and basically an equal rights amendment to the Constitution, right? That's what they were calling for. They lost to the practical folks who said, well, if we just make this about women's right or women's suffrage and not actually get into the equal rights for women or abolishing slavery, then we'll get that easier 70 years later. And then we'll just be able to vote our way into all this stuff. The point I'm making is when movements like this, moments like this, don't come around every day, right? Like we are fast approaching a gut check pivot moment in this movement. And there are so many people ready to just sell out before the real fight begins. And they want to sell out because they think if we just get money out of politics, then everything will be fine. And it won't be fine. It's not like we had a functioning democratic republic before Citizens United or before Buckley versus Vallejo or ever. Remember our exercise yesterday? We got to be part of a movement. Am I right? Yeah. Right. So that's the thing. That's what Move to Amend is about. The last three groups, and honestly, we don't usually put it up there, but since Ryan is here as part of Wolfpack, I'm going to name these three very quickly. Wolfpack comes out of Cenk Uygur, the Young Turk, who has the largest online news service or news program. They are calling for a constitutional convention. They are not clear at all about what amendment they want. In fact, they just, Cenk told me straight out personally, we'll support any convention. Doesn't matter, then we'll work it out from there. We think that's a huge mistake. And that it actually sets us up for failure. Where we agree with them is the tactic of a constitutional convention is probably where we'll need to go. But I want to be clear, this notion of constitutional convention or a congressional amendment, both of them have to get ratified by the states, right? So it's going to take a huge political movement to actually win anyway. But that Y in the road, convention or Congress, that Y in the road, we got a long way to travel before we even get there. So we're not picking fights around convention or Congress. We think it's a huge mistake to say, no, only this one. We just think that's a mistake. The other thing is, frankly, the rhetoric of Wolfpack is all about money and elections, all of the materials, that's what it looks like. So, and that's what they, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
The next here, can I provide a direct response?
Very quickly.
So we're calling for a limited convention to deal with the issue of Citizens United and attendant cases like Buckley, Vallejo, Free Speech Now. And the amendment that's proposed on our website, which you can read, is corporations are not people. They have none of the constitutional rights of human beings. Corporations are not allowed to give money to any politician directly or indirectly. No politician can raise over $100 from any person or entity. All elections must be publicly financed. So I think it's a little bit beyond what you're saying. We don't get to dictate that that is the amendment that gets called in a convention because we don't put the language in the resolutions. So you're correct on that one.
All right. So the next one is United Republic Represent Us. This is a multi-million-dollar organization that's funded basically out of the Democracy Collaborative. They're all about within the existing legal system, including Citizens United and everything else, what's the best that we can get in terms of a congressional legislative approach or package that comes out of it. That's what they're about. Every one of their proposals would actually pass constitutional muster, at least yet, because, right now. But remember that, you know, lots of stuff used to pass constitutional muster that has been overturned.
So they used to be about an amendment, but they have dropped that.
Right.
What's their name again?
United Republic or Represent Us. And they've been like 5 different things. Or no, that's Root Strikers, which is basically Larry Lessig's current platform, the Harvard law professor. He's pretty clear. He's just about money and elections as well.
And constitutional convention.
And a constitutional, well, yeah. Probably, but that's a fake. This is the thing. He told me, really, we're not going to do that. Right? But we'll threaten. We'll use it to threaten. So it's like, you know what? Like, that is, like, I mentioned Calabrar. I want to say that, like, it concludes with real movements, and the great African revolutionary Amilcar Cabral said, "Mask no difficulties, tell no lies, claim no easy victories." Man, if we as a movement would incorporate that to actually tell the truth about what's going on, actually be honest with one another about where we can and how we can relate to, if we would stop looking to claim easy victories because that's what the funders need to see, and so therefore we like start to believe our own damn rhetoric, like, oh, we're winning when the climate is boiling, whenever more brown and black people are being locked up every fucking day. The list of which we are clearly not winning is so long, but there's the kernel of actual, like, real victory, right? And that's the thing. Mask no difficulties, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. That's, for me, personally, the commitment that I'll make to you. and I will ask you to make it to me, and as long as you're honest and clear with me, we're going to have a great relationship. And as soon as you start lying to me, I'm going to be at arm's length with you in every way because you've proven to me I can't trust you. So I want you to think about that and think about conducting yourself that way with everybody, and we'll build a movement that can win. All right.
Okay, so we only got 20 minutes left, and there is time to maybe huddle by region or state. I know some of you have already done that already, so hopefully you're good. But if you still want to do that and like set a meeting or a conference call, or if there's something that one of the three of us can help you do to do that, then we are happy to. And we do want to get rid of all those materials. So if anybody wants to, some of it we'll give away for free, some of it we'd ask maybe for a little donation to at least cover the cost.
Name your price, everything, let's go!
And then I will be sending out the contact information for everybody by email and the evaluation either tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay? Thank you, everybody. It's a galactic ending. We had already done it.